So risk, it's a big tag word in health and safety programs. In fact, health and safety programs need to revolve and be driven by risk assessments. But how can risk assessments done properly and done well enhance and improve your program? It's actually pretty simple. Stick with me and I'm going to tell you how. But the very first thing we have to consider is, what is risk? I mentioned in a previous video that definitions need to be a part of a health and safety program, so risk needs to be defined because it means different things to different people. But what does it mean within your program? Simply put, risk is the chance or probability of the manifestation of a consequence after exposure to or interaction with a hazard. Now, how do we judge the risk? How do we consider how severe the issue is, or how severe the hazard is, based as well with the likelihood that it could occur? Now, we use a risk matrix, and pretty simple. A risk matrix just looks at the relationship between the likelihood that the hazard is going to occur along with the severity of the hazard. But those two terms, likelihood and severity, you know what? They're going to be based on opinion, experience, and possibly just anecdotal thought. Realistically, now it becomes an objective measure, and we don't want that. We want some subjectivity. So how do we add subjectivity to the whole process? Well, let's take likelihood, for example. Now, stick with me. I'm going to be an archer. I'm going to take it, I'm going to shoot an arrow at a target. I suck as an archer. I do. I'm terrible. Chances are I shoot one arrow, I'm going to miss. Almost 100% of the time. But let's increase my chances. Let's give me 100 arrows to shoot at the target. Now, my chances are going to go up. But how? Let's say that I take and I shoot 8 arrows a month for a year. Or let's say that I take and I shoot 3 arrows a day for 30 days. Or let's say that I take and shoot 20 arrows a day for 5 days. Or 100 arrows in one day. What's going to be the higher chance of me hitting the target and hitting the target a number of times? Obviously the last one, where I'm going to shoot 100 in a day. Put it simply, is that when I increase the frequency and I increase the number of times the task is repeated in that frequency or that time interval, my chances are going to go up, or the probability that the occurrence of me hitting the target is going to go up. So let's put this into an exercise and look at likelihood. Really and truthfully, if we split it up and we look at time intervals that are reasonable within our human concepts, in other words, daily, weekly, monthly, or annually, we can then split tasks up into how often that they're done in these time periods. So are tasks done daily? Are tasks done weekly, monthly, or annually? And then beyond that, how many times are they repeated within those time intervals? Now, you can use anything you want, and you can do the intervals 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to whatever you want. My recommendation is to keep it as low as possible, but as high as possible to achieve a good balance. We want to look at the law of large numbers. In other words, the larger amount of numbers that we have, the better off and more reliable our statistics are going to be. But in the same token, not to be so large and cumbersome that you're going to be full of errors. So I try to keep mine at 4 within day, week, month, and year. And then I add 4 different intervals to each one of those. In other words, using it daily, and you can do it with percentages, and you can add 10 intervals in there if you want, 10% per each one, or you can just keep it simple and 25% for each one, or a numerical value for your different intervals. Totally up to you. So that gives you how many times things occur in a day, or a week, or a month, or a year, and use that to determine likelihood. As I said, if you do a certain amount of things within a year, it's likely not going to be as high a likelihood as if we do a certain amount of things per day, because we end up with more occurrences as a grand total. Now, that's likelihood, but let's put it into severity. How do we determine severity without being objective? Because I'm pretty sure you've all heard it. Well, you know, Jack did this and this happened to Jack.
I don't know Jack.
Nobody knows Jack. You've all heard the story. So how do we determine how severe something is? Well, we have a couple of different ways. One, if you work in a very big organization that's been around for a long time, chances are you've got a lot of data that you can mine and have a look at. But beyond that, what if you don't have that luxury? Or you want to go above and beyond that and have something that's very subjective? You can go to your workers' compensation insurers and have a look at their data and make a determination on the probable severity, not possible, because you're going to find things like fatal injuries and permanent disability are not going to be as high as, say, minor first aid required with returning to work. So obviously you're going to find that spectrum, and you're going to take and apply that incident and then find out the most probable severity based on that incident that has occurred. So it may take a bit of investigation on your part, but it gives you a good subjective base. So let's put this all into an exercise. Let's look at the consequence, if you will, of static positioning and the chronic injuries that may occur. And we're going to use it with two different occupations. One, we're going to take an administrative assistant, and the other one, we're going to take a maintenance person or handyman, if you want, with your organization. Now, hopefully as a health and safety professional, you're examining the different job hazard assessments and you're having a look at them for quality control and accuracy. So during this, you wanted to have a look at what they've determined is the probability of sustaining a chronic injury due to static positioning. In other words, being in one position for an extended amount of time. So we looked at the administrative assistant, and this person has said in their hazard assessment that they are seated at their desk every day. Every day at work, they're seated at their desk. And you look at how often this is repeated, and they're at their desk almost 100% of the time. So they're going to have a higher likelihood of experiencing a chronic injury due to static positioning because they are seated at their desk and they are at their desk every day for an extended amount of time. Now we look at the maintenance person here, and the maintenance person has said that they're at their desk very little. In fact, more likely in a weekly measurement versus a daily measurement. In fact, they say that they may be at it at a maximum of 4 times in a week. So you find that they're at a very low level. So adding those two numbers together, you find that this person has less of a likelihood or less of a probability of experiencing chronic injury due to static positioning than the administrative assistant. So great, we've determined the likelihood. Now let's look at the severity. And you've gone through and had a look at different workers' compensation totals and numbers and reports and put it all together. And you find that it's most probable that this person is going to have to leave work to seek medical aid and then maybe need some accommodation at work. So they're not the most severe, but they're not the least severe. They're somewhere in the center. And let's give them the second tier on both. So when you add it all up, you find that this person is at a 4, 4, and a 2, the numbers I've given, and this person is at a 2, 1, and a 2. Wow. They're very little. So when we compare the two together, which is at a higher probability of experiencing a chronic injury due to static positioning and is likely going to need some definite controls? And that's going to be this person, the administrative assistant, versus the maintenance person. So now, how does this help you within your program? And that's a good question. Let's look at a couple of different elements within your program. Let's look first at the workplace inspections. Now, when you're reviewing workplace inspections, and I've run into it, I know that a lot of other people have likely run into it as well. And that is, one person has determined a hazard as being low and another person has determined it as being high. Same hazard, same similar settings. And now, how do you remove that objectivity? Well, you need to actually have some subjectivity to it. And how do you get to that? Simple. Use your hazard assessment and use your risk assessment process. It's that simple. You can take the same risk assessment process because after you've developed a decent library and a good amount of data, you can then apply it to your inspection process and remove that objectivity and replace it with subjectivity and have some good concrete data to rest on. Not your opinion, not somebody else's opinion, but fact. What about incident investigation? How do you determine with your incident investigation how much effort and resources are put towards it that goes if you need to go above and beyond the legislative requirements? Often, it's not unusual for employers to say, you know what, this is all that we're required to do by the legislation. Why do we need to do more? You can use your risk assessment process to demonstrate why you need to use more. resources. It's that simple. But what about when you've drawn all your conclusions and you figured out the corrective actions? How do you prioritize them? Once again, pretty simple. I know you guessed it. You're going to use your risk assessment. That's what you're going to do. So it shows how between workplace inspections and incident investigations, two very important pieces of your health and safety program, how the risk assessment process improves them. But what about when you want to look at general prevention? Let's say that it's come to the time and budgets need to be put in, and now departments and so forth need to defend why they want to buy new workstation furniture, and who needs it and who can justify it. Well, it's pretty simple. You take your hazard assessment for the administrative assistant, you can easily demonstrate that they need upgraded or new or better furniture because of the amount of exposure they have to that probable hazard versus, say, the maintenance person. Not saying the maintenance person doesn't deserve good stuff, but if you only have so much money and you have to allocate it where you see best, obviously you're going to allocate it this way.
Let's pause for this brief message.
Hey there, just editing the video, and I thought I should add this. Whenever you're doing risk assessments, you need to look at the big picture. Now, the example here pertained to a chronic injury experienced at a workstation, so the people impact was the thing that we focused on. But whenever you're doing risk assessments, you want to look at the big picture. Back up, get to the 30,000-foot level, and look at it from 4 perspectives. Look at the people impact, look at the property and asset impact, look at the environmental impact, and look at the business impact. So look at the whole picture when you're doing risk assessments. Now, before I get back to the rest of the video, if any of you wants to have a look at the whole matrix and have a look at the spreadsheet, by all means, hit up the channel page, hit up my contact information, send me an email, and I'll send you the spreadsheet. Anyway, back to the rest of the video.
So in short, using risk assessments helps you to make good decisions, decisions that are based on data and defendable by the data, not opinion and not feelings, but data. So anyway, thanks for sticking with me. If you want to learn more about health and safety programs, I'm going to leave a link up here for the playlist for Health and Safety Programs Explained. You can have a look at it, and please, by all means, do me a favor, leave me comments on what you think on any of the videos. Up here, I'm going to leave a playlist on some video toolbox talks, because honestly, short toolbox talks help a lot to promote a health and safety program and health and safety in the workplace. But until we see each other again, do me a favor. Don't just think about safety, don't just talk about safety, but wherever you end up, do safety. Thank you. Bye for now.